The high-stakes game of royal chicken is finally over, and the House of York has not just blinked, it has been obliterated. For years, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson sat behind the fortified walls of Royal Lodge, convinced they were untouchable, protected by the ghost of the late Queen's favouritism and a delusional belief that their status outweighed the reality of a modern, cash-strapped monarchy. But King Charles III has officially pulled the plug, and the collapse is total. The private security team is gone, the sovereign allowance has been slashed to zero, and the removal vans have finally rolled through the gates of the 30-room Windsor mansion. This isn't just a change of address, it is the messy public disintegration of a domestic empire built on borrowed time, questionable money, and an ego that refused to acknowledge that the bank is officially closed. The king didn't send a polite letter asking his brother to downsize. He executed a financial strangulation that left the Yorks with no heir, making it clear that the era of luxury living on the crown's dime is dead and buried. Without that sovereign lifeline, Andrew found himself staring down the barrel of a lease trap he couldn't escape. The terms of his 75-year lease on Royal Lodge were clear: maintain the property to a royal standard or lose the keys. The bill for the crumbling masonry, the leaking roof, and the peeling paint has now reportedly topped £7.5 million. Andrew, a man with no official income and a reputation that is now firmly in the gutter, simply does not have the cash to fix a palace. The king offered him a brutal choice: find the millions to stop the rot or pack your bags. The arrival of the white lorries this week tells us exactly how that math worked out. He is being traded down from a 30-room Grade 2 listed stronghold to a modest property on the Sandringham estate, a move that feels less like a royal residence and more like a rural exile. But while the bricks and mortar of their lives are crumbling, the rot inside the household is being exposed in excruciating detail. New accounts from former staff describe a household ruled by fear, characterized by a demand for absolute control that bordered on the pathological. The centerpiece of this psychological profile is what insiders have dubbed the teddy bear protocol. This isn't just a funny story about a quirky hobby. It is the smoking gun of a man stuck in a state of arrested adolescence. Andrew reportedly owns 72 stuffed toys, all dressed in intricate uniforms and sailor suits. Every morning, staff were required to arrange them on his bed in a precise, pre-approved order, from the largest to the smallest. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a mandate. A laminated diagram was kept on the bedside table, showing exactly where every bear had to go. One former guard who saw the diagram said it resembled a battlefield layout more than a bedroom routine. If a single bear was out of place, or if an ear was tilted at the wrong angle, the staff would face a temper tantrum that could be heard through the thick stone walls of the lodge. Andrew would scream and shout like a spoiled child whose world had been tilted an inch off its axis, terrorizing maids over stuffed animals while his real life fell apart. While Andrew was obsessing over his toys, the financial shadow over the household was growing darker, and the latest revelations from the US Department of Justice have turned the spotlight onto Sarah Ferguson in a way that is arguably more damaging than ever before. The bad Fergie persona she once joked about has morphed into something far more desperate. Newly released emails from the Epstein files reveal a woman who was not just a victim of circumstance, but an active, pleading participant in the predator's orbit long after he was a convicted sex offender. The documents expose a humiliation so profound it is difficult to reconcile with her title. In a 2010 email, 2 years after Epstein was convicted, the Duchess of York wrote to the paedophile asking for a job. "I don't understand," she wrote. "Don't you just get me to be your house assistant? I am the most capable and desperately need the money. Please, Geoffrey, think about it." Let that sink in. The former daughter-in-law of Queen Elizabeth II, a woman who once stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, was reduced to begging a convicted sex trafficker to let her be his housekeeper. She called him the brother I never had and described him as her pillar. This destroys the narrative that Sarah was merely naive or trapped. She was willing to scrub the floors of a monster if it meant keeping her cash flow alive. The desperation in those emails is palpable. She admitted to being in the gutter, weighing bailouts from billionaires and considering selling her jewelry just to stay afloat. It paints a picture of a woman who had completely lost her moral compass in the pursuit of solvency. The revelations get worse. The document dump includes an exchange that has sent shockwaves through the royal establishment regarding her daughters. In March 2010, after Epstein asked about a trip to New York, Sarah allegedly replied, "Not sure yet. just waiting for Eugenie to come back from a shagging weekend. Princess Eugenie was 19 at the time. The casual, crude tone of a mother discussing her teenage daughter's private life with a known sex offender has unsettled even the most hardened royal watchers. It speaks to a total lack of boundaries and a desperate need to impress Epstein with insider gossip, using her own children as currency in her transactional friendship. Another email from 2009 asks, "What address shall we come to?" "It will be myself, Beatrice, and Eugenie." The inclusion of the princess's names in correspondence with a man who preyed on young girls is a stain that will be nearly impossible to wash away. The financial fallout for Sarah is immediate and total. Following these revelations, she is shutting down 6 of her companies: S Phoenix Events, Fergus Farm, Luna Investments, Solomon Limited, Philanthropreneur Limited, and Planet Partners Productions Limited are all expected to close. Her charitable foundation, Sarah's Trust, has also announced its closure for the foreseeable future. This is a wholesale liquidation of her business interests, a sign that the toxic association with Epstein has finally made her commercially radioactive. The £15,000 Epstein paid to settle her debts with Johnny O'Sullivan, the assistant who pleaded for unpaid wages, was not a lifeline. It was an anchor that has now dragged her entire enterprise to the bottom. The collapse of the parents has forced the next generation to flee. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have seen the writing on the wall. They haven't just distanced themselves from the scandals, they have practically fled the country. To save their own brands and protect their young families from the toxic cloud hanging over their parents, the sisters have established lives abroad. Eugenie is spending her time in Portugal and Qatar, appearing at art events and maintaining a professional distance that screams of self-preservation. Beatrice divides her time between the United States and Europe. They are the collateral damage of a parental legacy built on excess, arrogance, and greed. Their retreat is a clear signal that the House of York has no future in the new reign of King Charles. They have chosen to move on, even as their parents cling to the wreckage of their former lives. The happiest divorced couple in the world myth has finally died. For 20 years, Andrew and Sarah lived together at Royal Lodge, in a bizarre post-divorce arrangement that confused the public and frustrated the palace. They presented a united front, but as the walls of the lodge close in, that front has finally fractured. For the first time in 2 decades, they are facing the prospect of living apart. Andrew is heading to his exile in Norfolk, to a farmhouse that staff describe as ramshackle and pokey. Sarah, meanwhile, faces an uncertain future, stripped of her business empire, her charity, and the royal roof that shielded her from the consequences of her spending. She sold her own London home recently, reportedly believing she would stay at Royal Lodge forever. Now, she is quietly devastated, her last link to royal life severed by her own emails. As the last of the boxes are loaded onto the removal vans, the image of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor moving to a farmhouse in Norfolk is the ultimate picture of a fall from grace. He is a man stripped of his status, his security, and his grand stage. He is trading a 30-room mansion for a 5-bedroom house with a leaky roof and a history of flood warnings. The king has successfully streamlined the monarchy, and in doing so, he has surgically removed the most problematic branch of the family tree. The Yorks are out, the money is gone, and the era of royal entitlement has officially come to a grinding, quiet halt. Andrew is finally finding out what happens when the money stops, the staff leave, and you are left alone in a house where the only thing you have left to control is a television remote. Sarah is finding out that you cannot beg a predator for a job without eventually paying the price. From the balconies of Buckingham Palace to a damp field in Norfolk and a liquidated business empire, the journey of the Yorks has ended in total, absolute ruin.